Welcome to the Clause YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.
Hello and welcome to Strategic Frontlines, a Clause YouTube channel. We are going back to back today after one podcast. This is the second one, and this is going to be on the maritime domain and ops Sindoor. Both will be connected and linked. And to discuss this, we have with us our guest, Vice Admiral Anil Chopra. A very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what we are going to exactly do is that I'll briefly set the stage, and then I'll invite Admiral Chopra to express his views. So what we have seen is that the maritime domain always remains a pressure point, and in the last few conflicts it has done so, whether it was Kargil or whether it was Balakot or whether it was the recently, or it is still going on, Ops Sindoor. Just to put into context, I attended a seminar. It was an international seminar organized by the India Foundation at Muscat, and where there were it was where there were about 46 countries being represented by their serving serving officials, which were essentially from the Ministry of External Affairs and other Ministry of Defense, etc. On the Indian Ocean region, and the Chinese representative in the Middle East, who looks after the entire Middle East as far as China is concerned, was also invited to give a talk. And in his address, it was a special address, and in that address, he started off his conversation or talk with a statement which should kind of worry us. I won't say worry us, but we should be prepared for this kind of a intervention as and when it takes place. He said that China is a near Indian Ocean power. So I suppose it feels that it has done away with the pond of South China Sea and the pond of East China Sea, and now it is looking at the bigger and mightier ocean called Indian Ocean region, and it wants to put its footprints in this part of the water world. So, what do you make of this kind of a statement? What are the implications for India, and how do you see China actually expanding itself into the Indian Ocean region if it says that it is a near Indian Ocean power, sir? So, over to you, Admiral Chopra, with your opening remarks on this particular issue.
Thank you, General Dushyant. We've all seen a lot of forward-looking statements from China. They are always projecting what they will do in the future and where will they be by so and so year. So I don't think there is too much in that statement that we are not aware of. Having said that, we are all aware that the PLA Navy is now the largest in the world, and it's a pretty new Navy in the sense the ships are of recent vintage. Now that's its basic maritime strength, but it has a lot of negatives also, beginning with geography, lots of pushback, and there's little combat experience. All this everyone has spoken about. Now, they may talk of being a near Indian Ocean power, but you may note that they're completely focused at the moment on the Western Pacific, where they have to face 3 bilateral security arrangements and a few other groupings and powers who are pushing back at them constantly in the Western Pacific. So the Chinese have managed to become a force and are now somewhat being able to be present almost everywhere in the Western Pacific, South China Sea, and their problems with Japan, etc. But they yet don't have the capacity, in my opinion, to project power in both oceans. But they will have it in due course because of 2 reasons which are clear. One is they're very dependent on the Indian Ocean, not only for the oil and the energy, but for all their markets and investments and resources and their sea lines of communication, this ocean, the Indian Ocean, is critical for them. And they will eventually try and be present in larger numbers. They also need the Indian Ocean as a stepping stone further west to the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. If they want to be a great power, they can't stop at the Indian Ocean. And since it's going to be difficult for them to leapfrog into the Pacific, they will naturally try and come into the Indian Ocean. But there is a problem with the Indian Ocean. One is whether we sometimes talk about the Arctic or the pipelines, but Malacca remains the main flow for China, and the geography problem still remains. The Indian Ocean is very easy to enter and exit in peacetime, but it will be very difficult for military forces to enter and exit from this ocean in wartime. And therefore, units which are here during hostilities are vulnerable. And I think that is known to most observers. And if we have the wherewithal to exploit vulnerability, then things are okay for us. If we don't have the wherewithal, then we may have a problem. So if you wish to exploit any vulnerability, or if you wish to address their eventual coming into this ocean, there's only one or three words I can say: capacity, capacity, and capacity, and capability. And I think that message is pretty clear to everyone. The Chinese strategy for in the near term, of course, is they realize they're vulnerable in the Indian Ocean, so they keep trying to take the focus away from it by keeping the northern borders alive. And whatever may be their objectives on the northern border, part of it is to keep it alive so as to shift our focus away from the ocean, shift our funding away from the ocean. And they have been pretty successful at this, because we cannot disregard our northern borders. And if the northern borders are alive, it is but natural and correct that our focus and our funding would have to shift towards the north. So this is where things stand. I think various Chinese commentators and think tanks and newspapers will keep talking about them being an Indian Ocean power, a near Indian Ocean power, and various such statements. But it is far from being a reality as of the moment. And they don't really have any basis except. So we leave it at that. And sorry for this rather extended answer to your first question, but I thought it would be appropriate to put it in perspective. Thanks. I can't hear you, Dushyant.
You're on mute.
Yeah, my next question would be for General Bhaduria, and then I'll come back to Admiral Chopra, linking from there. General Bhaduria, Op Sindoor just happened. It was essentially a land air centric operation where the targets were on the land, and they were targeted both by the Army and the Air Force. The Navy also played its role, which I will further ask Admiral Chopra as to how the Navy played its role as far as Operation Sindoor is concerned. What has actually happened is, politically, if you look at it, or if you look at it from a strategic point of view, we find that Pakistan seems to have possibly achieved what it wanted to achieve, in the sense that, see, a long time back, it got itself out of the FATF, so that opened the door for kind of aid which was to be given. So IMF gave 6 billion last year, and now it has opened the next bit of the aid, which is first tranche. They've already got 40 billion aid by World Bank next 10 years. People are saying, I mean, in the West, that these were ongoing discussions. They had nothing to do with Op Sindoor, and therefore, do not link it or do not conflate it with this Op Sindoor. That's one view to take it. But the timing of all these things does make you feel that it is all being conflated. So, in short words, I would say that possibly Pakistan has managed to hyphenate itself with India, because in the past, wherever I have been talking in forums, there has been a common crib that India is doing a strategic neglect of Pakistan. Right. So I think they have got over that point, and the army which was losing, that is, I'm talking of the Pak army, which was losing relevance, has come back into relevance as far as the people of Pakistan are concerned. How do you think that we can again bounce back and dehyphenate this ancillary threat which we have on our western border, and go beyond this and go to our real problems and real issues, whether which are related to growth, economics, and northern border issues and maritime issues? So your views on that, very short.
Right. Thank you very much. And firstly, I will agree with you that yes, there has been some kind of a hyphenation with Pakistan, but I personally believe that it's only temporary. Now, why do I
Mhm.
say this? Because if you look at the history, 10, 15 years back, the West and particularly US, traditionally adopted a South Asian approach to the regional security. Because that time Pakistan was the frontline state against the war on terror, and they were fighting in Afghanistan. Pakistan was through Pakistan. A lot of logistics used to flow, and they were training. We know Taliban's and things like that, right? The other thing was that Pakistan and India became nuclear, so therefore the West always had this issue that the war may turn to be a nuclear war in case both India and Pakistan go to a full scale war, right? India was very careful to dehyphenate, and they succeeded to a great extent because India wishes to be seen as a major global power and a leader in the global south. Now, they have a rightful ambition because by now we have become the fourth largest economy. Very soon, we are going to be the third largest economy. We are member of G20, we are member of Quad, BRICS, and we are a huge military power. And what Admiral Chopra was trying to say is our presence in Indian Ocean region is recognized. So India is seen always.
Jal Baduria, just interjection here, just to add to your argument and support your argument. Just now, 5 minutes back, a news has come that Canada has invited India to the G7. So, just adding to your
Absolutely,
argument
absolutely,
further.
absolutely right. That this shows that India can no more be neglected, in spite of the issues that we had with Canada, with the previous prime minister, and even now there were some murmurs that probably those are continuing. But see what has happened. So therefore, India's heft in the international arena cannot be denied. Now, versus this, what we are seeing is Pakistan. Now, Pakistan is a failing state economy. We know all kinds of problems, so I don't want to repeat those. Now, as far as the aid and all are concerned to Pakistan, Pakistan is of great nuisance value. That for sure they have been able to establish. And but nobody wants them to become a nuclear Somalia, right? With their nuclear weapons, they are actually getting whatever they want. So that is something which is worrisome, and I'm sure the world will take note of it. Now, when you said that after Ops Sindoor, some kind of a hyphenation took place, yes, it happened because of the Pakistan China nexus, which is so deep, and this was exposed. The depth and the operational integration of this nexus was exposed during this operation. Now, what I wish to highlight is that look, the operation was being conducted only against terrorists, and the way China came to support Pakistan, that was amazing. We all knew that Pakistan China nexus is very strong, whether it is their strategic weapons, military weapons, and in Navy, Army, Air Force, the aircrafts, everything is being supplied by China. However, what surprised us was that the operation coordination, the military personnel of PLA were embedded. They were strategizing, they were guiding the Pakistan Army, the Air Force, right? So that is something which was surprising to us, and that is something which we need to take note of. So, what I would like to say is that now the blurring of the lines between LOC and LAC is taking place as far as western and the northern border is concerned. And in POK, these would be there. So the threat, the two front threat, is now very, very real to us. And as far as de-hyphenation is concerned, all that I would say is just take your mind back to the Shangri-La dialogue which took place last week. And what did the Defense Secretary of US say? He said, we are cooperating with India extensively. They want to co-produce equipment to deter China, right? He highlighted the importance of US India Autonomous Systems Industry Alliance, right? He said we are interoperability, logistics, operational coordination. So these were all signs to the world that India is very important to US as far as their Indo-Pacific strategy is concerned. Of course, we have our own views on that, but uh, uh, that's why I said it's a very temporary hyphenation. I think within few months, things will be back on as they were, say, before operations in.
But thank you, Jan Bhuduria. I think you raised some very interesting points. I kind of like the phrase of nuclear Somalia. I think they should go out in the scholarly domain as the new buzzword. But going further from here, I would like to invite now Admiral Chopra. He finished off. Jan Bhaduria finished off with the statement that Indo-Pacific. He talked about Indo-Pacific and the role of India in the Indo-Pacific vis-a-vis US and the other major partners of or other major players of Indo-Pacific. So, how do you see the maritime front? Because if we are going to have a two-front threat which is given, like Daniel Markel I mean, just in the podcast before this said, if anyone had any doubt about China being partnering the Pakistan in terms of South Asia's conflict, it lays to rest that particular activity. It is going to support in every respect, but it will have its limits. That's a different issue. So therefore, if it is going to be a two front threat given in any kind of scenario, whether it is a conflict with China or whether it is a conflict with Pakistan, both are going to hyphenate each other or conflate with each other. So how do you see the maritime front kicking in this kind of environment?
Yeah, thank you. So, the maritime front can always be opened up at the will and discretion of the government. And the Navy, people are under the misconception that it requires long to mobilize. On the contrary, the fleet is always ready to put to sea at short notice. And the Navy is, in any case, in peacetime and more so in crisis, deployed at sea, mission specific, all over the Indian Ocean. The thing about the Navy is that the battle space of the Navy is in international waters. The whole battle space has got neutrals besides the enemy. There is neutral merchant shipping. There are warships from many nations. And when you go to war at sea, it immediately affects the rest of the world, trade, and many other things. And that's why navies are usually the last to be brought into battle, because when you bring the Navy in, you are more or less acknowledging that you are in a full-fledged combat situation. Therefore, it is always with great thought that you open the maritime front. And as I said in my answer to your last question, should push come to shove, and should the maritime front be open, then I think at the moment the cards are very much in our hands. We have a peninsula jutting out into the ocean which bears our name, and we have a very large number of naval and air bases on this peninsula which are capable of surveillance and interdiction of more or less the entire ocean from the west coast of Africa to the Malacca Straits. The Navy, of course, also has a presence on the east of Malacca and is very often present in the South China Sea and otherwise on various missions. The Indian Navy is three-dimensional, pretty capable, highly professional. Its numbers have been static for some time. And there is a need, as we become a major power, to increase the force levels of the Navy, which requires additional funding and shipbuilding. I am of the opinion that this will happen by the sheer force and flow of events. And the thing about uh, uh, warships is that they can be just deployed, and suddenly they can their potential energy can be converted to kinetic energy against ships, against trade, against the land. Increasingly, you can be hit. You can hit the land from international waters, very much legally allowed to be there, and this can take place in any conflict. So the most important thing when you talk of front, even if the Navy deploys extensively and its deployment is visible, as it was in Sindoor, then it is a factor that has to be considered. It cannot be neglected. The strategy and policymakers on the other side have to factor into account that this force of ships could be brought into action at almost instant notice. And that's why when navies move their fleets or ships, it immediately brings pressure to bear. And it is something that has to, in the strategic or even tactical operational calculus, has to be taken into account. So the very fact of deployment actually activates the front. This is a point I want to underscore. It's not necessary for shooting to take place. The moment the armed fleet is deployed at sea and disappears into the ocean, it is mobile. There are no defenses at sea. There are no defensive constructs. The most, attribute which is most unique to the Navy is mobility and offensiveness. All defense the Navy does is through offense. And people again think that it's not the job of the Navy to defend coastlines. The Navy goes into the ocean, seeks out the enemy, brings him to battle, and destroys him far from shore. So the whole concept of maritime operations is somewhat different because of the vastness of the maritime space and the international nature of the maritime domain. But suffice it to say, because of what I told you, that should there be, should I say, hot conflict in the Indian Ocean, the cards at the moment are very much with us. And I think this fact is known to everyone across the board. So if the powers that be wish to open up this front, it will certainly reduce the pressure on the twin front up north and west. That I can say without any hesitation. Thank you.
Okay, I think you made it very clear as far as the intersay positions are concerned. I won't say capabilities, but positions are concerned as far as the IOR is concerned, and also related to our western border, or western adversary. The the important question which possibly you kind of circumvented was that during Op Sindoor, during Op Sindoor, uh, I mean, just to explain to the public, because people have not actually heard the naval, the big major naval role, which actually also made a lot of difference to why the Pakis got, came running for the
Yeah,
talks. It's not only the Air Force. I mean, Air Force, fine. It is not only the Army. Army, fine. Army was firing and shooting at them for last 15-20 days since the time Pahalgam incident took place. But the Navy also had a very, very critical role. If you could explain that, you mentioned it directly, indirectly, as far as maritime front was concerned. But just explain that
yeah,
in specific terms.
yeah. So, when you have a large body of warships deployed in a space where it can bring itself into combat in no time, it is something which has to be factored in. This I told you. It doesn't take
Yeah.
long to sort of translate that power into kinetic power. But one of the other things which the Navy does is that when it goes into action, there will be collateral damage, both civilian and commercial. Because if it were to attack the land, then there would be ports involved, there would be other things involved. So it takes on a different hue from what you can do, from the air or through the land. And therefore, I think, again, in Sindoor, the presence of the fully deployed Navy along the southern coast of, along the coast of the adversary was a front. It was a live
Absolutely.
front. The only thing that didn't take place was the actual shooting of
Shooting.
munitions. Yeah,
The potential
but
was there.
that potential is instantly available. But it has to be factored that moment you start a shooting war in the Navy, that whole area, there are merchant ships plying in that area. There are other warships from many nations present. So everyone gets affected. So I think in Sundur, the decision makers were waiting to see how things shaped up. And I'm quite convinced, and that had this gone on longer, the Navy would have been brought to bear in terms of actual uh, kinetic munitions or firing of its great amount of weapons that it has.
Okay, so I mean, thanks for explaining that, and also I think the audience would be clear now that if somebody is being, hounded upon by three major arms of a particular nation, that nation would be scared and on its knees. Especially if you look at the naval capabilities, this is one force where we enjoy a huge asymmetry in our favor as far as our Western adversary is concerned. I think that is
Yeah,
that most of the people should know about it. That our capabilities are far far more than our adversary on the West.
if I may interject, you're absolutely right. And this would be the flank of decision, actually. In
Absolutely.
any
So
full-fledged combat, this would be the maritime front would be the flank of decision.
yeah. So now my next round questions to Jan Bhaduria is that uh, while we have got an overall view of Sindoor and how the land and the air and the navy have actually factored into the operational matrix, why we are not covering land and air in detail, because most of it was covered in detail by DG Air Ops and DGMO Army. What I am interested in is that, this was not really a major conflict. It was just a cameo of only aerial battle, whether by the army or by the air through missiles and the aircrafts and drones, right? But if there is to happen anything in the future, and if it is likely to expand to a longer duration, do you think that there is a need now for us to be prepared for that kind of a contingency, and in what terms, so that the doctrine which we have now uh, come out with, that terror and talks and terror will be an act of war, etc., is not mere words, but it is also translated in capabilities which can execute these three major statements made by our prime minister. So a brief word on that, sir, and then I'll go to Admiral Chopra for one more question on navies.
Very quickly, I'll just make two, 3 points. Firstly, Pakistan, it appears, will be a proxy for China. China may not like to engage India directly in a conflict. It might be using Pakistan as a proxy, which is a scenario which is quite possible. And that we should be prepared for. The second point that I wish to make is that the warfare in last 10, 15 years has changed. The way when we were in service, the way we used to fight, that kind of a warfare is now no more going to be there, and it is all going to be a asymmetric and multi-domain operation warfare. And very recently we saw the very innovative use of drones, FPVs, by Ukraine. So therefore, what has happened is now the warfare is going to be far deeper. Earlier, we thought it is only on the LOC or LAC and on the battlefront. Now, the warfare may be taken deep inside in the hinterland. So, therefore, our security has to take care of that. Also, the internal security that becomes very, very important, because what Ukraine could manage in Russia was they could have people already planted there. They could use the people who were present there. So, same thing can be done in our case also, because of the kind of population that we have. There's similarities, they speak the same language, so it is highly possible. So therefore, that two and a half front that we used to talk, that half front is gaining prominence now, right? Then my next point is, now it is high time that India comes out with its national security policy. We just cannot have a ad hoc thing being put out. I'm sure they have a plan worked out. I would not say that they are absolutely ad hoc, but it has to be enunciated in public and for the benefit of the other countries, so that they know this is what India's strategy is. Somewhat we have done in Operation Sindoor. Very clearly we have said what are our red lines as far as the terrorism is concerned. So we need to put out a national security policy. Then Admiral Chopra said, capability, capacities, of course we have to build. So for that we have a Atmanirbhar Bharat program going. Now if we see, our threats are real and they are actually happening today and tomorrow. So therefore we cannot wait for this program to roll out in the manner that we are envisaging. So it is high time that we have a little relook and import things that we have to import, because otherwise we will be fighting with our hands tied behind our backs. So particularly so, like we had a discussion on the space. Our space assets are absolutely woefully short. Our ISR capabilities require massive upgrade. Likewise, our secure communication. So there are certain areas where we must actually focus, even if it requires import. And my last point is that India has to do external balancing, and we know which are our partners. US is going to be a partner for our threats, whether they are on west or in north. These temporary hiccups by Trump's tweets and all notwithstanding, we'll have to be with them and do some external balancing. At the same time, Russia also is a very important partner. Thank you very much.
Jan Bhuduria, I think you have widened the discussion a little bit. So I will ask, because if you talk of diplomacy, you cannot leave behind Navy. And Navy is supposed to be the front runner as far as military diplomacy is concerned. Now, in the same breath, we have said that, we have to be a partner with US, and Russia we cannot ignore. But the way these countries have pitched in the current scenario or current conflict, we find that it is becoming very difficult for us to really find true friends and true true friends and true enemies. I'll put it both ways. So people are talking of getting purely transactional in our approach, right? So I look at it that we really have willy-nilly limited option but to fall on the United States. Reason being that the Russian capacities are getting degraded by the day because of the war which they have been fighting for the last 3 years now, and it doesn't seem to be ending despite these peace talks and efforts, etc. So we are probably getting more and more linked into the Western fold. With this kind of a reality, I would like Admiral Chopra to dilate a little bit on the defense diplomacy. How do we see the Quad going forward? How do we see our relationship with the other actors? Because the Navy would be playing a very important role in developing and building on those relationships. And thirdly, how do you see the Navy being a force to reckon with even during peacetime? I mean, that was something which I suppose you would like to clarify to our audience, that you are not lying quiet and somewhere in the eastern coast or the western coast. You are actually playing a very, very important role during peacetime. Over to you, Admiral Chopra.
Thank you, Jean. Yes, I think this is an important point to clarify. Whether it's peace or in peacetime, the Navy is deployed. We have mission-based deployments all over the Indian Ocean, from West Asia to the east of the Malacca Islands. Naval ships are always at sea. The Navy, part of the Navy is always at sea, and it is always armed, and it can always be brought into action. In peacetime, whether it's against pirates, against terrorists, or if you wish to fight a war at short notice. The Navy, which is at sea, is armed. So this is something that people must realize. And therefore, when you have warships at sea, they are instantly deployable, very versatile. Now, naval diplomacy was perhaps in the old days, but the fact remains, when you move a body of warships, everybody takes note of it. And if you move carrier strike groups, then they make news all over the world. Because again, they have to be factored in. They have potential energy, and that can be translated into kinetic immediately. One other thing that needs to be underscored is navies are legally deployable around the globe. I can go 12 miles off the coast of any nation legally. There's no international, there's no airspace to be crossed. There's no borders to be crossed. Now, this is sometimes people who haven't been to sea perhaps don't realize. It is the great commons of mankind. Everybody is free to use the sea for trade, for security, for resources, living and non-living. So the navies are everywhere. And everyone has interest in the sea in peacetime, mainly for trade, but also for resources. And everybody wants a stable ocean, good order at sea. So when we talk of maritime security these days, we are referring to non-traditional security. That is against criminals and pirates and robbers and people who are disrupting the good order at sea. It is not Westphalian nation-to-nation security when we talk maritime security. And naval power and should I say the naval power of balance is a different thing altogether. So in peace, navies are very effective by just moving them. They can send a signal of reassurance to friends. They can signal a threat to enemies. They can coax a decision. They can coerce the decision makers of some other countries. So navies are basically instruments of state policy which are used for signaling. Just moving part of the Western Fleet from Arabian Sea to the Bay of Bengal is noted, and it has to be people think, what is the reason why? And vice versa. And similarly, so when effective, you use this navies therefore for signaling, for diplomacy, for goodwill visits, to show the flag, to show presence, to show visibility, to project power, all this in peacetime. It's not happening in wartime. So the sheer movement, the mobility of ships 500 miles a day can take them all over the place in very short time. One day they're off Aden, other day they're off Sri Lanka, third day they're off somewhere else. And all these, since the world is transparent now, no movement of, major movement of ships is unnoticed. And therefore, in itself, it not only signals intent, it signals force, it signals power, it signals potential. And that is what the navies do in peacetime, far from diplomacy, but more in terms of instrument of state policy for signaling whatever you wish to signal, both to friends and to enemies. So that is, I think, what is most important to understand.
Both to friends and the enemy. So that was a loaded kind of a statement, and people should understand what the admiral was trying to hint at. So navy is one arm which can be the power arm of yours even during peace. The Indian the army or the land forces remain restricted within boundaries which are considered as inviolable. The Air Force, if it flies across the boundary, it is considered as starting a war. But if the Navy comes right up to 12 nautical miles of your coast, it doesn't mean a thing, but it can mean a lot of things. So I think with this kind of a conclusion, we will take some questions. There is somebody, there's some disturbance.
Yeah,
We'll
some
take some
disturbance.
questions. There is some, we'll take some questions and we'll start off with the first one, and that is Shagun Thaplial. Sir, should India prioritize alternate partners in Asia like Japan, South Korea, and ASEAN nations for developing joint technologies and personal training? I would request Admiral Chopra to say whatever give his comments, and if anything has to be added by General Bhaduria, he can do so thereafter. Admiral Chopra.
Thank you. Yes, in the business of using a host of countries to uh, sort of help you develop something major is fraught with many issues. History has shown, and recent history has shown, that whenever you have large groupings, they tend to become unwieldy. And seeking consensus and decisions are difficult when you have to deal with a large number of nations. I would go along with what General Dushant, you yourself said. It is time to stop hedging all over the place and to focus on what we need to rapidly improve our indigenous defense industrial base. And we can't go to everybody and everywhere because that makes very difficult to integrate things and to pursue many streams. Now people may think it's a good thing to not put your eggs in one basket and have a supply. But every time you induct or you have a interaction with a country, any country, I won't name it, there are issues of legality, of language, documentation, of
I think the communication of Admiral Arun Chopra has gone off, so he will get back as soon as his connectivity improves. What he was trying to say is that we should not be hedging around too much now. I think we have to decide quickly who all are our partners, get into one-on-one trade with them, become more transactional, and look at your capability development from that perspective, whether it is South Korea, Japan. Like Japan is offering us the development of sixth generation fighters. Please go join in and be part of that particular program. So similarly, there would be other projects for which you may have to find partners separately. Now, with that, I'll come to another one, next question, and that is by NRK. Sirs, a couple of weeks ago, not one but two FA-18s fighter FA-18s of US Navy literally fell into the sea, and one was shot down by the Houthis. Was this just a bad week or overall decline in standards? If later, why? Now, if you'd like to comment on this, General Bhaduria, you can do, because the Admiral is somehow not able to join in because of his bad connectivity. Yeah,
can you hear me
I
now?
think he has joined in. Yeah, I can hear. We can hear
Yes.
you. So
Sorry, I
there
think
was
I
a question.
disappeared
Yeah, yeah.
out
So
at
there was a
sea. I went
question.
off for a while.
Yes, yes. I think
So we were
you
talking
sailed off.
about,
We'll go to the next question, sir. I elaborated on your answer. So we have gone to the next question, and this one is very very interesting for you, which says that, sirs, a couple of weeks ago, not one but two FA-18s of the US Navy literally fell into the sea, and one was shot down by the Houthis. Was this just a bad week or overall decline in standard? If later, why? If latter, why? So,
Yeah, it is an
would you like?
interesting question for me. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, we can
Can
hear
you
you.
hear me? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we can hear you.
Certainly an interesting question. Yeah. And I'm glad you asked me because I've commanded an aircraft carrier. And I don't
Yes,
think, unless you actually visit one out at sea, do you realize the amount of risk and danger which is present in peacetime on the decks of an aircraft carrier. It's a floating airfield full of explosives and aircraft launching and recovering high performance aircraft far out at sea, away from land. And it's not a business which lends itself to safety, in the sense that there are a lot of risks just flying these aircraft from any aircraft carrier of any country. And people sometimes wonder, how do planes fall off? They do. There are accidents because much is happening. It's a small little deck which is moving and tossing and turning, and at the same time trying to launch and recover aircraft, which could at any point of time crash or do anything into the carrier itself. So when you said that the U.S. Navy lost two in a week, well, they lost two in some time, in short time, which is of course not the normal thing. So it was a bad time, definitely. But accidents happen like this. Aircraft, while being moved on deck, sometimes pitch over. Aircraft when landing, pitch over. It's not an easy business. It's not like an airfield, or where you have plenty of space and platform is absolutely static. Here you have a mobile ship which is moving very small, like a speck in the ocean, and these jets have to come and land and take off. So things happen. And as far as jets being shot down, I would like to amplify the conversation which is now being taken, which is going around. See, when you go into offensive action, you're going to lose men and material. You can't go into offensive or attack, as the army knows very well, without losing people and material.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely. I fully
therefore,
agree with
if
you.
a couple of jets are lost, whether it's by the US Navy or by anybody else, it's part of the game. It's par for the course in the military. It's not a safe profession, as people might think in peacetime either. In peacetime, people go
Absolutely.
and do all sorts of things which they have to do in wartime. Whether in the Navy, the
Absolutely.
submarines dive, the aircraft launch from aircraft carriers, the guns and missiles are fired, and so it is in the Army and Air Force. And there are
Correct.
accidents, and casualties keep taking place. So I don't read very much into the F-18s and Houthis.
Okay, this is a question from future DG Artillery. I mean, he's already set his goal as far as personal ambitions go, and congratulations for that, future DG Artillery. Asks us, can you delve into how he monopolized global shipbuilding? We used to be good at breaking, but now we are losing lead even in that. What can we do as a nation for this apart from the government? Basically, he's asking, how the private sector can chip in India. We have
Who
the
does
two
he
major
mean? What does he mean by he? Into how he monopolized?
I think he's referring to China here.
Okay. Uh, so again, an interesting question. He's not monopolized it at the moment by far. There are many ships, many nations which make warships and other ships, including India. But he is, as you know, the manufacturing factory of the world, and he makes things faster. And the Chinese strength lies in the
Yes.
fact that they can manufacture equipment, whether it's ships or guns or bridges or flats or apartments, faster than any other structural economy. And so he has churned out very good stuff over the last few years. Because in his case, there is no private companies, it's all the state. In our case, we have a bit of a hodgepodge. And in our case, the public sector has why it's got a problem is it's very difficult to achieve efficiencies, of cost and time when it is not possible to should I say, streamline the workforce because of inefficiency or other negatives. So I would agree that the private sector is important for shipbuilding, but it requires a lot of capital to set up private shipyards. We have pretty good public shipyards, Mazagon Docks, Garden Reach, Goa Shipyard.
Right.
We just have
Yeah.
to figure out how not to get into time and cost overruns. And basically, it's
Mm.
figuring out
That's right.
efficiencies. And basically, it is figuring out how to discipline and motivate, simultaneously discipline and motivate the workforce. And unless that is
Correct.
done, because the ships have to be built by a workforce. And if that workforce is not disciplined in the sense not motivated and committed and adhere to the deadlines or timelines, then it becomes difficult. So I think that process is on, and we are also opening up to minor private shipyards as and when the time comes. But the broader question, as all of you know, is that our acquisition process needs to be streamlined so that big money comes in from the private sector, whether it is for ships or otherwise. And that will only
There
come
is
in
a
when there's
there is a compliment for Navy here about indigenization, that they are way ahead of the other two services. So my compliments to you, sir, as well, through you to the entire Indian Navy.
yeah,
But my question is to Jan Bhaduria now, because I would like him to step in as far as this is concerned. Why can't the other two services? The other day, I mean, we were having some kind of a discussion. Why can't the other two services replicate the Navy? I mean, they're trying to do their best. They have opened up similar design bureaus, etc. But somehow both the Air Force and the Army seem to be mm, remaining behind the curve. Can you pinpoint some reasons for it?
Uh, right. I fully agree with you that Navy has been leading the pack as far as the indigenization and construction is concerned. However, now both other services are also catching up, and here I wish to highlight the light tanks that we have built in 2 years' time based on our requirement in Ladakh. So our private industry has come up, and they came up with a light tank where Zorawar, which we have now deployed in Ladakh, right? So earlier, what was happening was we are too dependent on imports, and mainly from Russia. The tanks were Russian, the guns were Russians. Most of our equipment was Russian. Likewise, in case of Air Force, their aircraft were coming from Russia. HAL was only assembling and maybe servicing sometimes, right? So what has happened is now those um, things have been corporatized, right? So that has brought in efficiency, what Admiral Chopra was saying, and also some bit of push from the government. Almost about 140 50 items have been put a ban that you can't import these. So therefore now we are looking at our private industry, motivating them, giving orders, placing orders on them, and things like that. So things are moving, and I'm sure it'll take a while, but yes, we are late in such a venture.
Okay, sir, last question for Admiral Chopra, and then we have one more question. Admiral Chopra has to leave by 8 o'clock, so I'll quickly go over to him, sir. The question is: apart from freedom of operations, naval operations, solo or joint, what can be done to irritate or warn him? I mean, I don't know what he's referring to him. He continuously tries to probe us in the IOR. They're all referring to China. So we must answer in kind, not be reticent. Do we lack capacity for it? He's probably
no,
referring to hydrographic ships, etc., docking on the Colombo airport. I mean, there have been some incidents in the past. There was one very recently. A quick word on it, sir, and then we move on to the
yeah,
last
yeah.
question.
Like I said, the high seas belong to all mankind. Everyone is free to go wherever they want on the ocean. I can deploy in the Atlantic or the Pacific or wherever I wish to. So Chinese vessels, especially his fishing vessels, his hydrographic vessels, do come in. They have to be careful not to enter our maritime zones of India or other countries in the region. But they will be present in the Indian Ocean, and they will legitimately be there in outside the maritime zones indulging in whatever activity they are indulging in. Now, uh, the very fact that the Indian Navy is, like you said, disproportionately strong in the Indian Ocean, not only with respect to Pakistan, but with respect to China at the moment. And it's not just the ships and the aircraft and the
China as well.
submarines. It is the support from the bases which are all within, which can deploy these ship
Absolutely.
submarines
Absolutely.
and which can
Absolutely.
then take these ship submarine and
Correct.
aircraft back,
Correct.
rearm them, repair them, and send them out again. So it's when you say a naval base, it is not a place where you just get fuel or water or food or recreation. You need to be rearmed and you need to be repaired and you need to be sent out to sea. So a good naval base will turn around ship submarines, rearm them, and send them out again. So this can only happen. And I was going to say earlier that the only real base that the Chinese have is Karachi. No other place like Hamandota or
Abs-
Djibouti or
Yeah.
any of these
Yeah.
places is a base in that sense of the word.
Last question, and then we'll call off this particular show. Ask Shritik Kothari. Asks, sir, over the past year, many planned spy ships, like I think it is the same thing, Yuan
Yeah.
Wang series, have been mapping for hydrological data and ocean floor. Can you elaborate for a layman? What advantage does this have for them? Quick, sir,
When you have
just
to fight in a
in few
particular,
lines.
when you have to fight in an ocean, you must know its hydrology. That is the bottom. How are the contours
Correct.
of the ships of the seas, underwater? And what is the temperature of waters? For those of you who don't know, the way we detect submarines is by sonar, sound waves. And sound waves are affected by the hydrology, by the temperature and pressure quotient at sea. It's a very complex affair. And therefore, to get hold of a submarine, you need a variety of sensors, but all these sensors are effective if you know the hydrology. So all navies all over the world will try and get as much hydrological data about various oceans and various places where they foresee that they may have to be operational. So that's what the Chinese are doing. But we make sure that they don't enter our maritime zones. And all of the Indian Ocean, in the Indian Ocean, there is a certain amount of area, which is our territorial waters, our contiguous zone, our EEZ. And then you have the high seas, where anybody and everybody can be present. So
Correct.
by sheer deployment and visibility and potential, he is warned and he is irritated if you speak that way. But again, I think all of us understand that for all the talk that we do, it's all capacity and capability. Do we have? We don't even talk about certain capabilities. For example, that do we have the ability to cross over and across various seas and otherwise. But capacity we are building in all three forces, and I think we will soon be able to get most capabilities, especially space and cyber capabilities, integrated into the three forces. And one last thing is, I think the Navy has been ahead in the curve of indigenization because the culture in the small service is different. Maybe we get our hands dirty and we get into the nitty gritty of things on a ship, we have to. And I think the same culture effect. So you'll find everybody from the captain downwards, sometimes in dungarees, trying to fix or figure out what is a problem with a pump or with a something else which is wrong in the ship. So this thing of getting into nitty gritty and figuring out machinery and why it's not working and why it is working helps us to then help the industry to get what we need. So we leave it at that.
Thank you, sir. It just leaves me with thanking on behalf of General Shankar to Surya Prakashan for his becoming a YouTube member, and also to Rajiv Kumar for becoming a YouTube member. With that, thank you very much, sir. And it was a lovely
Thank
discussion. We
you.
had a lot of cobwebs being cleared. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Dushyant.
Thank
All
you.
the best. Thank you, Rakesh.